Hi, I'm Derren Brown and I'm in the Apollo Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue in London. And we've just recorded a live performance of Showman here, my latest show, and I'm here to tell you all about it.
When I say three, your hands will pop apart and separate, and as they do, that name too will just come apart and separate from your mind. And the harder you struggle in vain to try to remember whatever it was, the more impossible it is to recall. On the count of three, you forget your name now. 1, 2, 3, your hands come apart, your eyes open, the name's gone. Think back, try and remember what it was. It's the weirdest feeling. Try and remember it. The harder you try, the further it goes.
So the show is called Showman. It is a couple of hours, 2.5 hours of audience participation, of hopefully real miracles. It's also a show with a very big heart. The show is born from the idea that a lot of the things in life that feel most isolating, like when life's just not going well and things feel difficult, can feel very lonely, like you feel it's just you and you've failed. But those are precisely the things that tend to link us to other people. It's such a part of the human experience that those things that feel most isolating are often the very things that bring us together. And that was a big heart of the show. And allied to that, the importance of remembering what's important in life, not just kind of sleepwalking through it. It's a real question, isn't it, as to at the end of your life, will you feel that you've lived your life, or were you a sort of a bit of a passenger? Were you kind of just watching from the sidelines? I talk in the show about the regrets of the dying. Palliative care nurses started asking their patients about 10 years ago what their biggest regrets were, and the number one regret is, I wish I'd lived the life I wanted to, not the life others wanted me to. However we find that, really, I guess, is up to us, but just having a sense of authorship, particularly in a life when our attention is being grabbed from all directions, and we can spend a lot of our life thinking about what's on the horizon, taking stock of what we want our lives to be about and taking authorship of that is an important thought to keep close.
So there's a lesson there for all of us if we want to take it, but also the comfort of just knowing we'll all come to pretty much feel the same kind of stuff. The things in life that feel most isolating are so often the very things that bring us together, which is what I'd like to explore tonight.
So we spend a month writing the show. There's me and two other guys, Andy Nyman and Andrew O'Connor, who direct the show. And then a month rehearsing it as best as we can and kind of finding the language and the bits of script and all those things that are important. And so after that period, we sort of know what the show is, but it's impossible to really know until you get an audience involved, because they're almost like the cast, like the rest of the cast, or the people that are going to take part, whoever they're going to be from night to night. And sometimes I just don't know until there's 1,000 people there, what percentage of people will respond to that? Will that be enough of a percentage to make the next bit of the show work? So until it goes on the road, I don't really know whether it's all going to work.
Well, okay, so I think your grandmother had this. This was your grandmother's. So when you were a kid, you would go to your grandmother's house and play Scrabble. She loved it. And I presume she has since passed on, and this takes you right back to that. It's a really lovely way of remembering her. I'm really sorry. Did you lose her recently? I'm sorry, that's horrible.
Process of inspiration, that's an interesting one. Normally I'm book writing in my life, or at least thinking about the topic of how we might live well and flourish and what the inner life is. That's always what interests me. And whether it's in the books or the TV or the stage thing, I think that's what brings everything together. So I'll tend to take the ideas that I've been thinking about and put them into whatever the performance project is that I'm doing. For Showman, the idea that the things in life that are difficult are actually the things that we share, that we're all joined up by the things that are hard in life, was very important to me at the time we were writing it, and still is. And it also means that I'm going to spend a long time doing a show, and it's nice for it to be about something I care about. There's a challenge for me, because magic is just this, if you want to call it magic, whatever you want to call it, it's sort of quite a childish thing, really. You're just sort of trying to impress people, and a lot of it's based on dishonesty. So how do you make something honest and grown up out of something that's dishonest and childish? And there's no easy answer to that other than just to try and find it from scratch every time. It is a very difficult age to feel connected in, and then we've all just been through, a weird bunch of years that's upped everyone's anxiety and up to everyone's sense of loneliness. I don't think there are any easy solutions to that other than to talk about it and discuss it. And the very act of being open and vulnerable about that with people and recognizing it first as what it is part of actually what can help with it, because by discussing it, you're creating a connection, which is the very thing you need. Recognizing it and talking about it is the starting point.
We're all easily sidetracked from what we know is important in life. We're all made anxious by pressures and distractions that may not even be real. And when we're in these kind of places, it can feel lonely, like it's just us and we've failed. It can feel very isolating.
I'm not generally a fan of quick fix self-help, not because it can't be valuable, because sometimes those things can be. The reality is life sometimes goes the way we want and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm a big fan of the Stoic philosophy, which just tells us to focus on the stuff you can control, which are your thoughts and your actions, and really that's it. And everything else, just to decide that stuff is fine. The stuff you can't control is fine. You can't control it anyway, right? So by trying to change it, you're going to drive yourself mad and become more anxious. We're pulling one way with our aims and our desires, and life is pulling the other way with its own stuff. They used to call it fate. We don't call it that anymore, but we're certainly living this wiggly diagonal line in the middle. So how do you live with that? How do you live with the reality of that? I think is a much more helpful way of thinking than pretending it'll all go well if you just believe in yourself enough. I often get asked if I use the stuff that I do in real life. I don't in the sense of like controlling people because I think it's important not to get into a weird thing of trying to control things that you can't, let alone other people. So in real life, I'm probably the opposite of what people might imagine I'm like, given what I do on stage. What magic does, if you take that as generally what I do, it shows you that stuff that seems impossible can often be solved or created in a very elegant, simple way. It gives you a sideways look at things in terms of problem solving. And then I think any performer, you sort of, you can switch into a performer's mode sometimes, which is helpful, but you've still got to access that. Like I'm actually quite shy, and I find like dinner parties really difficult. I'll often just kind of shut down and think, oh, what am I doing here? I don't know how to do this. Everyone else is really great at it. And of course, part of the way out of that, which doesn't always occur to you with any clarity at the time, is realizing everybody's doing that. Everyone's thinking that. They're just better at faking it. Advice I'd give my younger self. It's a weird one. My mind, because I came out when I was like late, like really late. And when I was growing up, like that was always a source of confusion and angst and so on, and shame, which unavoidably is stuff that you don't ever quite let go of. So for that reason, it always feels like, you tell your younger self the truth, which is people really don't care. They really don't care about who you're into. It just doesn't really upset or bother people anything as much as you think it's going to. And that's obviously not going to be the case for everybody, but generally speaking, would it be good advice to go back and say, come out, it's fine, no one cares? Or maybe I should just value the fact that actually it was kind of, it was difficult and complicated, because it's actually given a lot of good to my life as well. Hello, I'm Derren Brown. You can watch my show Showman right now on Channel 4.